nityam taduditam karma swanushtiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi tene shasya vidhiyatam swanushtiyatam taduditam karma. It's weird having lead and repeat with myself. Thank you. Yeah, there was a bit of a sound, but we're good now. Thank you. So let's start that line again. Tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi. Tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi. Kamye matistyajatam. Kamye matistyajatam. Papogaf paridhuyatam. Papogaf paridhuyatam. Bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam. Bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam. Atmecha vyavasiyatam. Atmecha vyavasiyatam. Nijagrahat turnam vinirgamyatam. Nijagrahat turnam vinirgamyatam. We'll chant this together. Vedo nityam adhiyatam tadudidam karma swanushtiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajatam papogaf paridhuyatam bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam Atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrahat turnam vinirgamyatam. So we had seen the first couple steps so far. Vedo nityam adhiyatam. May I daily study the Vedas, continuously study the Vedas, because Vedas cover every aspect of life that I would need. So long as I'm living my life, may I always take guidance from the very Shastras that comprehensively guides me in life itself. Vedo nityam adhiyatam. Then, tadudidam karma swanushtiyatam. Based on all the things that I have read in the Vedas, that I have learned from the Vedas well, may I perform those actions acutely well. Swanushtiyatam. May I do it to perfection, and that will be my goal. Let me not stop at doing my best. Let me reach the best. Let me perform those actions to perfection. Because it is in aiming for perfection that I will gain true mastery over myself. Then, tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi. While I'm performing my duties, as prescribed by the Vedas, I may struggle with using just willpower to perform those duties. There are enough flaws and weaknesses within my own mind that I need a bigger, infinite bucket of inspiration that I can always fall back to keep myself going. And therefore that bhava is now introduced. Tena Ishasya, of that Lord, apachitihi. May I worship that Bhagwan, and vidhiyatam. May I take it up as a sacred teaching or sacred instruction given to me, a command almost. So what is this relationship between doing my duties and having this bhava? What is the interconnectedness of these two? Last week, just as a reminder, we had gone through a similar structure. When we say karma, my duties, it is not just a single word translation that I perform. Okay, I wake up in the morning, I take care of my kids, I do my job, those are my duties, done. Is that everything? But really, the Shastras have sat down and understood what are all of the things that can possibly be done by a human being according to the complete variety and spectrum of where I belong. So a couple weeks ago, we had seen that duties are prescribed based on ashramas that I belong to. Brahmacharya ashram, grahastha ashram, vanaprastha, and finally sannyasi. Each one has their prescribed duties because of the stage of life we're in. Last week, we had talked about the duties based on the particular temperament of the mind, the varna, the color of my mind. So we see duties prescribed by the varna that I belong to: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And last week we had covered that varna often being mistranslated or misinterpreted as the caste system. There's a lot of historical corruption that has happened to that system, which we have to understand that that's what has happened. There are repercussions to that corruption in today's society that we are seeing. But because of today's state doesn't mean that we negate the original purpose of what the Varna system was all about. Because we see too many academics, politicians, newscasters that say the very weakness of Hinduism lies in the caste system. But again, we cannot disregard the chaos that we have been seeing in the last couple of centuries. But at the same time, we cannot negate this system that has been prescribed by the Vedas. That is our trust in the Vedas. Are you hearing that weird humming? I don't know if it's an echo. Oh, that's the classroom. Never mind. Let them be. Suddenly Akashvani is speaking. Anyhow, so may our trust in our Shastras not be broken by the misconceptions or problems we see in history. May we take it as an opportunity to reconnect with the roots, come back to the higher vision that the Shastras have to prescribe. So with the ashrama I belong to, the varna that I belong to, what are the duties I have to perform? And we had also seen that flow chart, like that diagram we had seen, that karmas that need to be performed, there is Nishiddha, things that I shouldn't do. There is Vihita, things I can do and should do. And under that category, there's 4. First one is Nitya Karma, Naimittika Karma. Nitya is that which should be done daily, regardless of where my station is. It's a basic foundation of routines. I find it funny because after studying Sadhana Panchakam like this, I revisit a lot of these productivity, health, work-life balance, like there's this whole genre on YouTube, and I'm like, wow, they are really taking what has already been said in the Shastras. We just have a problem because it's under the umbrella of religion. We're like, oh, here we go, I have to be like super studious and super strict. But honestly, if we look at each of those elements, they really are very helpful in constructing a productive life day in and day out. And lately I've been seeing, have an established morning routine. Don't you think our great-grandparents also had morning routines? They did it automatically. And just yesterday I was thinking about, I found a video where they were talking about the deep work or getting into a state of flow. And that's when you batch the certain kind of tasks you have so that the deep thinking kind is reserved for morning. And I'm like, Brahma Muhurta time, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. There's so many elements that I'm seeing that it is being borrowed in today's modern, self-help field of study. So let's come back. Let's come back to the trust we have in our Shastra. They do put all of these things together. So things like Nitya duties, daily routines, daily maintenances we must do on a regular basis regardless of where I am. Then you have Naimittika Karma, which is occasional circumstances that require me to shift the set of duties that I have. They can be both good and bad, meaning joyous or a little bit more grave or sorrowful in nature. Like, for example, if you have family birthdays, anniversaries, all of these samskaras from birth to vivaha, the marriage ceremony, all of those we celebrate, including utsavas. And I greatly appreciate Sanatana Dharma and Hinduism for having so many holidays. Why just stick to December? We have one almost every other month. Because in a way, the mundaneness of daily routine, Shastras understood, we can get very tired with it. We have a spark of inspiration, and then it slowly declines. And they've timed it pretty well that there's another Utsava right at that time when I need it. So when there's Navratri, I take that, my routine changes just a little bit in the evening. That now I have so many people inviting me to their homes, there are pujas that go on, and 9 nights of Lalita Sahasranama chanting that we're going to do at this mission. And then that final day on Vijayadashmi, we have a puja. It's this level of, here's a moment where I can take up a special sadhana, not for long, just 9 days, just 3 days, or maybe just overnight Mahashivratri. Let me do that inspiration of tapas. Let me invigorate myself, reconnect with that higher as to why I'm doing these things, and continue again. So those are for the good moments in our life. There are also sadder moments that happen when a family member is sick. They would need our support. There's a national disaster that happened, natural disaster. I think recently there's been a hurricane that's coming through Florida and that East Coast. So suddenly we bring together the whole community and saying, how can we help? How can we save? So there are differences that come up. Then if there's Shraddha Karma, how do I help support the family that's going through that difficult time in their period? Our daily routine does get disrupted, but at the same time, being there for those that need me during both the good times and happy times, that is also part of my duty. Which is why there was a special word given for both of these put together. Niyata Karma, something I must always be doing. Because this category contrasts the other two that were given. The other two is Kamya Karma and Prayaschitta Karma. So 2 and 2. So Nitya, Naimitika, and luckily they both start with N, and it's called Niyata. So okay, those are all together. Then you have Kamya Karma and Prayaschitta Karma. What is Kamya Karma and Prayaschitta Karma? And by the way, these two categories will relate to the next two instructions in our Sadhana Panchakam. After, let me come back to that verse, just so we know that we're not repeating things, we're actually continuing forward in our verse. We were just talking about karma svanushtiyatam, doing my duties. We saw nitya and naimitaka as the daily duty I have to perform. But these two next categories, kamya and prayaschitta, are related to kamye matistyajyatam and papogaf paridhuyatam. So I'll explain both of them simultaneously as we're talking about each of these concepts. Kamye is related to the word kama. So kama means desires. If because of my personality, the mental temperament I have, the vasanas I've accumulated up until this point, I will have a certain amount of tendencies, certain likes, something. We're not just talking about ice cream and coffee here. We're talking a little bit more about the natural instincts and inclinations that I've always had since I've been born. Some of us are very analytical by nature, so you put me anywhere and I will start figuring things out, putting pieces together, puzzle solving. Others have a more artistic style where they'll start redecorating any room they go into, or they'll start seeing colors. Their level of analysis is very different. It's a natural temperament of that particular mind. And along with that, I may have certain desires that are more deep-rooted within my personality. So some things are, maybe I want to become a leader. I want to become a king. So I will pursue that line of field of work. Or maybe I want to pursue and have a family, and I have a very strong desire for children, that I want to become a mother, I want to become a father. So those are other deep-seated desires that may come out. Best example to see this is when we look at the Pandavas. I may have already given this example, but each of those brothers, born to the same family, born to the same set of parents, born in the same household, each one has a different personality. Yudhishthira loved Niti Shastras, to be part of Dharma. How do I lead there? Arjuna says, I don't care about leadership. Give me arrows, give me bow. This is all I'm interested in. Bhima, he was not only the expert in the mace, Gada, but he was also an expert cook. And I think I've joked around before that I don't trust skinny people in the kitchen because those that can enjoy eating food will really appreciate how to make food. I'm just making a joke here. But He had a real appreciation. He had a big appetite. I think one of his name means wolf belly, meaning his appetite is as hungry as a wolf. And therefore, he also developed the art of cooking itself. During the entire war, he would be the one cooking for the army during the interludes in between. So Kumbha Paka Shastra, I think, is what he created as a recipes and how to cook and the art of cooking itself. So like that, each one of us is very different. And when I have a particular desire, may I exhaust it. Very interesting word that Shastra tells us. Exhaust your vasanas, not fulfill your desires. There's a interesting nuance in how to tackle this. Therefore, kamya karma has a very specific instruction given to it. So I'm gonna, like I said, I think last time we had seen a couple of morbid examples. I apologize, but it brings out the point of the message a little bit stronger. If I had a kama for children, may I perform and fulfill those desires according to dharma, not adharma. Why is dharma very important? Dharma is of two types, meaning two threads that will determine whether it's adharma or dharma. When it leads to destruction and downgrades our evolution, or I like to call it devolution, right? We turn into devils there. When it regresses in the human dignity, that is adharma. And if, for example, I were to have a desire for children, I could follow the adharma path and go steal someone else's child. I know, sorry, it's a really bad example, but let's take a look at it though. That there is someone else who had that child. I wanted it so bad that I didn't care for the rules and ethics of it, stole them. What would be my relationship with that child? What would go on in the mind of that child when they have been kidnapped from their original family? What would be the relationship or state of being for the family that's there? What would the society feel in terms of security? On so many different levels, that one act of selfishness can cause destruction and chaos for so many different levels. And you're talking about generations. That child is the next generation. What would their relationship be with other friends that they hang out with after having understood that this isn't my original family? So dharma is that which upholds, that which keeps things together, that which maintains and sustains. So if there's any act that is being performed that will break that, ruin that, then that is considered as adharma. The second way of thinking about dharma and adharma more simply is, would I appreciate that being done to me? So stealing money would be another example. That I have worked hard. I have spent time and effort to work according to the rules and laws and regulations and ethics around me. I've spent time to earn this money and put it in my bank account. Some talented hacker who's just hardly graduated high school gets on the computer and hacks my banking system and takes all of my money and goes spends and splurges. Would I appreciate that? Would I want that done to me? Definitely not. How dare they take something they did not earn? So if that's the case, then may I not steal from other people? So in that way, let's say that there is a charity that I work for and I'm collecting money for donations for that foundation. If there's no checks and balances, I can look at that money and saying, no one would know if I took some small part out of this. If I don't like people stealing money from me, then how dare I even entertain the possibility of stealing from others? So the phrase that's given in Dharma Shastra is Atma Priya. Because I love myself, may I treat others like myself. With this, there's another layer to channelizing kama through dharma. Because at the end of the day, if we look at fulfilling desires again and again and again, will it actually bring me the satisfaction that I need? We saw today in Bhagavad Gita verse, this is verse number 7, right? That if I perform my actions according to my likes and dislikes, I will never be in a state of peaceful quiet. It will be in a constant state of agitation. That's one thing. Second thing is, kama is a self-feeding, fueled momentum. Weird phrasing there. What I mean is that when I fulfill one desire, it never completes and rests. It amplifies and leads to more greed. So in Shastras, they say kama can either go into krodha or kama can go into lobha. Kama, that's desire that is being obstructed. My immediate reaction would be anger. We saw the kid exclaim, right? What happens if I don't get ice cream? Anger! That's an automatic response when a desire is obstructed. So krodha is a natural response. If I do fulfill it, I only want more. Now, why does that more happen? Because the moment of experience of happiness is temporary. I've had my favorite logo still, whenever it comes to this example, is their motto on the Starbucks coffee cup. Just like the first sip. Meaning, the joy I experience on the first sip is like that. Oh, finally I have coffee. This is warm. This is pumpkin spice latte, November. I finally got it. That first experience is there. Then why do I take the second sip? If the first sip was so good, why do I get a venti-sized coffee? Because I want to repeat that first experience again and again and again. I don't want it to stop. Happiness dependent on the external world will never last. So, this awareness that I'm living in a temporary world should make me frustrated enough to say, this is not worth it. Seeking joy in the world outside is not worth it. Now, to get to that state, I have to go through it multiple times. When we're trying to teach children, listen, have discipline. This is good for you. You can tell them 100 times, but until they leave the house, go to college, create the chaos of an undisciplined lifestyle, have failed grades, and then come crying to mom like, I don't know what's going on. I told you, man, go back to your structure. Then finally, when they stand up and say, okay, I got to do this for myself, then we see them grow. So you can only bring the horse to the water, but at the end of the day, the horse has to drink the water. So in the same way, Shastras is that benevolent mother who constantly gives advice to us, but at the end of the day, it is us who has to go through the experience of trying to fulfill the kama, trying to fulfill that desire, and seeing and testing, will this really give me settled, permanent, long-lasting happiness? If we really sat down and thought about every desire that we have, we will see that it doesn't come to that state at all. So when that realization grows stronger and stronger and stronger, then I will say, this kama, this desire is not worth it. I don't need it anymore. So when we see in Sadhana Panchakam that verse, kamye matis tyajyatam, may I renounce and let go of this kama, it is through this intellectual conviction that kama through this world will not give me what I desire. May I outgrow it. Now, the Shastras don't tell us, ignore your desires, suppress your desires, like be a sadhu and pretend no desires ever exist. They understand that's going to bubble and boil and burst like a cooker within us because the mind is still convinced that desire is worth it. If it's that convinced, don't suppress it. It will only backfire. So Puja Gurudev in his self-unfoldment says, don't repress or suppress your kamas, sublimate your kamas. Sublimate, what does that mean? I come back to that definition of karma yoga again, especially that second half of that sentence. Selfless actions dedicated to a higher altar. Dharma, meaning taking my kamas and aligning it with dharma, part of that is also, how do I selflessly serve others with this desire? With this selfless attitude dedicated to a higher altar, I will overcome and sublimate my kama. So how does this look? Let's take the simple example of wealth again. I'm not talking about a general greed for wealth. If I have a genuine natural tendency to want to generate wealth, generate resources, I have that skill set within me in a good way, then let me use that for a higher purpose. I would challenge or ask you during this week, find the first couple verses of Bhaja Govindam. He tackles kama in all these instances, and wealth is among it. He says, if I were to earn wealth just for myself, I want to enjoy things, I want to, be in luxury just for myself, that will last only for so long. Do we not see millionaires and billionaires, and I'm talking like in California, these, influencers who've suddenly gained millions of dollars overnight because they became viral, without having a deeper understanding or control with themselves? Don't we see that they fall into depression, they fall into anxiety, they fall into all sorts of mismanaged way of living and only experience sorrow? If wealth be directed towards myself is supposed to be fulfilling, why do I still see problems? So instead, look at those that have a grander vision in mind with the same amount of wealth. When they take that wealth and dedicate it to the upliftment of my family, my community, to the nation, to something better and bigger, giving is their attitude, the same wealth has a better effect on their mind. They can sleep well at night. They're content. They are fulfilled. Not because they have money, but because they're giving money. The most ironic situation, is it not? You would think that you'd get contentment by taking money, but really you get contentment by giving money. So earning and being successful in this material life is a good thing. Shastras don't tell us stop doing that. They say do it well, but make sure what it's dedicated for is always that higher altar. Watch how my attachment to wealth, I can outgrow it. So that is the 3 principles of channelizing kama through dharma. That may I not inflict pain onto others that I would not appreciate for myself. May I make sure that any kama that I fulfill does not destroy the evolution of myself or the society around me. And may I eventually, by fulfilling those kamas in such a way that I can outgrow them. This would be the process of sublimating my kamas. Therefore, in this healthy manner of growth, may I overcome and renounce kama itself. Kamye matis tyajyatam. Then the next line is papogaf paridhuyatam. Paridhuyatam. Even that word itself sounds like a gust of wind. Dhuyatam, Paridhuyatam means in every form, in every manner, may I blow away this entire horde of papa that I have accumulated. Papa. How do we normally translate that word papa? It is the sins that I've committed in the past. And when we hear the word sin, we would think that as soon as I make that mistake, that's it. I'm labeled as being condemned forever. I am the devil. There's no way out. I'm at the bottom. I might as well do whatever I want. I've already committed a sin. Again, that is not the line of thinking in Shastras. It is very compassionate in encouraging us that even if you have fallen, learn how to get up and keep going. There was a story, I think, with Jatayu and his brother in Ramayana. Before, the whole Ramayana happened, Jatayu and his brother would fly into the space, atmosphere, or whatever, and they had a competition between the two of them saying, I want to reach the sun. Let's see who can reach the sun first. And they were both flying towards the sun. As they got closer and closer and closer, the intensity of the heat of the sun would start burning their feathers. Enough that his brother completely got burnt. Jatayu was a little bit more scared. I think he was the younger brother, not as daring. And his feathers got singed and he couldn't fly anymore. Where did he end up falling? Into an ashram in the place of a guru. So this is quite symbolic in saying, in our ambition to pursue the world, we may make mistakes, and when we fall, may we fall into a circumstances that will teach me and help me grow. Because it was Jatayu then, with the guidance of the Guru, that he was able to rebuild his health, rebuild his understanding of what should be done and what should not be done, and therefore survive long enough so that he could play a part in Ramayana when the time came. So although it may seem like a simple story, it has a very powerful meaning in there. If I were to make a mistake, may I learn from it and may I grow from it. May I never let that mistake become a burden that I'm always under. So in this case, we come back to that chart again. We saw kamya, and then next category of karma we should perform is prayaschitta. What is prayaschitta? Prayaschitta, 2 words, if we were to separate it, prayaha chittaha. Prayaha means I am performing tapas. And tapas is a really good word. Tapaha, tap means to burn. So whenever I put effort that burns me in that effort, that is a tapas. Like a simple example is going to the gym, right? When I lift weights, I'm putting in that effort voluntarily, and I feel that burn in my muscles, and it is through that burning that I strengthen. That would be the idea of tapas. So prayaha, I'm putting in that effort to burn and feel that burn. Chittaha means a sankalpa. So this is not a forced or someone else is telling me to do this. It is a self-chosen, self-volunteered sankalpa. Sankalpa is also a very strong thought process. I choose and vow to stick to this discipline that I've taken upon myself. And it is that dhrida, that I am not going to move from this vow. This is a sankalpa. Come what may the world turn upside down, may my mind fight me, but I will not move from this sankalpa that I've taken. And it is through this sankalpa that I offer my tapas. Prayaschitta. Why are we taking this up in the first place anyways? It is related to the idea of papa and the mistakes that I've made. So mistakes can come in 2 forms. Puja Gurudev says it can be the sins of omission or sins of commission. I either have done things I shouldn't have, or I didn't do things I should have. So in my nitya duties, I've slacked off somewhere. In my kama, I have done something that I shouldn't have done. Sins of omission and sins of commission. And papa and punya, especially papa, it creates agitations in the mind. It is very unsettling. As careless as the ego may be, saying, yeah, that's fine, I made a mistake, sure, why not? We may disregard it, but deep down in our seat of the heart, there is a genuine sense of remorse, there's an agitation, guilt. All of these things are good signs and indicators within our own conscious. So, for example, if I were to lie, there was probably a situation where my ego couldn't handle the consequences of telling the truth. I would have lost my job, somebody would have been insulted, my pride, my ego, whatever it is, something I would have lost that my ego was not willing to give. So to compensate, I lied. But do we not have this like itching, bubbling feeling like I lied? And now I have to constantly be vigilant. When will this lie be revealed? What more stories and layers do I have to build up to protect this lie? There's a sense of fear and weakness that automatically comes when I've told a lie, no matter what that circumstance is. On the other hand, if I have the courage to tell the truth, yes, I can be hit by that moment, but at the end of the day, I stuck by the truth. There's nothing for me to fear. That sense of stability won't come if I've lied. So papa means that there's some mistakes I've made, and because I haven't owned up to it, in that process, there is this sense of agitation and fear and weakness that comes in the mind, and that is why it's categorized as papa. Now, to deal with this, the Shastras are very considerate. They don't condemn us and say you're forever burdened by this mistake. That is why an entire category is prescribed, saying, I understand, you've made a mistake. Here are the things you can do to work on it, to come back to the state of strength and stability after you've committed something wrong. So, prayashchitta means to atone, to repent, to make up for the mistakes that I've made. One really good example that this is something that even the law can allow us to do and that we generally practice. If I were to file taxes every year diligently, I'm good. That was my duty, nitya duty, or yearly nitya duty that I had to do, and I fulfilled it. But let's say 1 year, for some reason, I did not file my taxes, or I made mistakes on my taxes, or, God forbid, I lied on my taxes. That would be really bad. But even if that mistake was done, does the law not give us a grace period of another 3 months or another 6 months saying, hey, fix this, you made a problem, but if you submit again by October time, things will be set back into place? And even if that grace period is missed, there might be a fine, extra fine we have to pay. But once you have fixed your problems within the grace period or you've paid that fine, don't we get restored into good standing under the law? So in a similar fashion, the grace period, the extra efforts that we need to put in order to rectify what mistakes we've done, even Shastras give us, and that is called prayashchitta karma. So this I'm pulling from Dharma Shastras by Guruji, and he had a really good line in his commentary. He said, life doesn't come to a standstill because of a mistake. Once you have atoned for your mistake, you become purified in the mind and you are able to continue your duties on a day-to-day basis. So, Manusmriti is a vast scripture that talks about duties of all different kinds. And Manusmriti also lists out different types of prayashchittas that can be done. Once I've committed a mistake and have truly regretted it, have remorse over it, that genuine, sincere feeling of guilt for what I've done, here are a couple different examples. They're not exhaustive and they're not, these are just general. For some mistakes, you need specific atonements that match what has happened, and that's why Manusmritis is very exhaustive. But some of the simple example is, kya pena, kya, or ka means to speak, meaning that when I've committed a mistake, to find the person that I should own up to, either to the person I've committed the mistake to, or to the guru, and admit the mistakes I've made, whatever it takes, whatever is appropriate. If I need to reveal and tell the truth, that is a way of atoning. So this definitely reminds me of our high school students that go to their parents and they say, Mom, Dad, don't get mad at me. Promise you won't yell at me, but I have something to tell you. In a way, they are following this kya pena. They're owning up to the mistake that they've made. So we had parents to deal with, and some of them are like, oh my God, how could you possibly? And they like blow up as soon as their kids tell them the truth. And we say, look, I understand that they genuinely made a mistake. They have to be corrected. They have to be punished accordingly. But one of the worst things you can do is get mad at them for telling you the truth about what happened. Because if we look at this, atonement starts with admission and acceptance of what is wrong. So in that moment, may I control my reaction, my emotions, and give praise to the parts that deserve praise, and may I give the punishments where it's appropriately, wherever it's appropriate. So the complexity of parenting is both that which is appropriate and inappropriate, both happen to coincide within the same act. So we have to be delicate in the way we handle that situation. But that's part of the responsibility of being a parent. That's what will really help us grow and mature. So those moments are important for myself and my child. So in that moment when they genuinely ask, don't get mad at me, don't get mad at them. Because this kya pena is a very important step, that admission to someone who they revere, who they respect, because we wouldn't go and admit a lie that we said to a 3-year-old because they wouldn't understand. But I go and tell the coworker or my spouse or a guru because we revere their respect. And it is to that altar of reverence that I surrender this mistake that I've made. So it's the first step. So another example is anutapena. Anutapena. Again, the word tapa is kind of hidden in that word. Tapa. I'm burning inside because of that mistake. What does that burning feel like? That repentance, that guilt. I genuinely did something wrong. This was not okay. A good thing to look at is my repeated mistakes. A lot of times I tell myself, don't eat those sweets. It's not good for you. And I fail at it, and I make a mistake. And I go gorge at a wedding party and say, whatever, this is all prasad. But I keep making that mistake because I genuinely don't have remorse over that act. If I really did, wouldn't I genuinely stop? I wouldn't even have to force myself. It will come bubbling out of me that, God, I can't see myself do this again. That remorse itself can become repentance and atonement if we sincerely believe it. So when we repeat mistakes, I really have to sit down with myself and ask, what parts of this do I not regret and why? Where is my ego being involved here that I'm enjoying this mistake again and again? Sitting and looking in the mirror will help me develop that bhava again. The third type is a penance. This is tapasa. Anutapana was the other one. That's the internal feeling. That's why the word prefix, anu. Very subtle form of that tapas is because it's inside. But I can bring that out from in an external standpoint, tapasa, to take up a tapas. So some examples can be taking up a fasting. I can go on a yatra, tirtha yatra. This one, especially yatra, sometimes when we go on trips to India, we take it like it's a vacation, right? We go visit saying, oh, I had a bucket list of all the places I wanted to see. I saw Tirupati, I saw this, I saw that. And we take it as a vacation. But when the word yatra is there, it means that I'm taking up a tapas. When we go to Kailash or Chardham Yatra, those are the two that I've learned recently, is that I am putting in the effort to walk the miles that is there. Taking my own baggage and carrying it up the mountain. Other tapas that I've seen on yatras is they will, I'll say it in Kannada because that's the only name I can remember, Hejje Namaskara. Hejje means a step. For every one step that I do, I will do Namaskara. Men will do the Sashtanga Namaskara. And last time I thought about it, it's kind of like the workout in what do you call it? Bodyworks, whatever workout. They do burpees where they stand up, do a jumping jack, and then they go down into a push-up, and then they jump up and do a burpee. And I'm like, you don't need all of that. Just do a Hejje Namaskara. With every step, they stand up, do Namaskara, then do pranams, take the next step, and do pranams again. And we're talking 25, 30 miles a day. What kind of tapas have we taken on to do such a yatra? Why are we taking up this effort? Because in my pain and in my sorrow, in my fight with my own mind, may I always be pulled forward by the tirtha that I'm reaching for. Bhagwan in that temple, in that sanctuary is waiting for me. I have to take the effort to get there in spite of all the pain that I'm going through. That may my mind remember that every step is an offering of surrender to Bhagwan. I may take that casually in my mind saying, yeah, Bhagwan, I've surrendered to you. I believe in you. You're my Bhagwan. That can be there. But am I willing to put myself through pain for Bhagwan? Do I have that kind of strength in my belief? So may my yatra, that diligent, conscious, step-by-step walking towards that temple, be the reminder of the strength of my Shraddha. This is a Tirtha Yatra. So there's an entirely different bhava when we take up a yatra in India. Another one could be Ganga Snanam. That we take every natural phenomenon around us as that representation of Bhagwan. And Ganga Devi represents the most purifying form. She comes from Bhagwan Shiva's very head. that she lives in all the time, she comes from that very highest remote place that represents that Paramatma himself. From that unmanifest form, she flows down into the manifest form to nourish every corner of India. The fields and richness of Bharat would not have its richness without Ganga Devi. So when she represents that knowledge, that spirituality within every Bhagwan, would I not want to surrender my punya and papa both in her? I believe in you. I believe in all that you've given me. May I be cleansed by your worshipful reverence and power that you can bestow on me. With this reverence, I will take a bath and submerge myself in you. I studied marine biology in college, and so I had an opportunity to go out and into the ocean quite a bit. And over time, the bhava for Vedanta was also growing at the same time. So at one moment when we were deep underwater, there's this entire otherworldly feeling that you get. The surface level, the sounds, the noise, the sights, even the movement and balance is so fast-paced on land. As soon as you go underwater, you feel tiny, you feel helpless, and everything is muted. And in that silence, it's like I'm in a whole other place. I'm at the mercy of the water that's around me. The water is holding me. There's nothing I can do about it. So that imagery, that sense of feeling, I brought to this idea of Ganga Snana. She who is such a powerful river, if I submit to that and let her embrace me, there's nothing left for me to hold on to. So even that way, the intensity in which I sincerely believe and surrender to the higher powers is what truly cleanses me of the papa that I've made. It's again all effects on the mind itself. Then another example is Parayana or Swadhyaya. And this comes into the fourth example of Adhyayana. And this again relates to the first instruction. I feel like we keep coming back to that first line, Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam. That whenever I find myself making mistakes, may I come back to Bhagwan as my refuge. So Parayana, to constantly repeat whatever scripture it is that I have taken up to, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Vishnu Sahasranama, Lalita, whatever it is, let me take up the tapas of chanting that daily or a certain number of times, because it's that constant attention to Bhagwan that is most important. Bhagwan, I've made that mistake. You are my refuge. You know everything about me. May I never make this mistake again. I'll wrap this up real quick. I apologize. I'm running a little bit over time. But the entire bhava behind prayaschitta, anything that we take up, it may be special, it may be general, but the point is 3 points, 3 levels of repentance or atonement for a mistake I've made. 1, may I have genuine and sincere regret and repentance for what I've done. That has to come from inside. Then 2, make sure I do not forget, and to make sure that I have gone through the consequences of what mistake I've done. May I take up some penance or tapas as an atonement for what I've done. And finally, may I resolve never to repeat it again. These 3 things are underlying any penance or prayaschitta that I can take up. So, in summary, of the 4 kinds, nitya, naimitika. May I do that daily and diligently, and may I do it with perfection. May I offer it as a worship to Bhagwan. For any kama that I have, may I grow out of them by performing it through the path of dharma. And along the way, if I've performed any mistakes in any of these 3 categories, may I genuinely regret those mistakes and learn from it and grow from it. So prayaschitta. So these are the 4, and they are related to the next couple lines in Sadhana Panchakam. Kamye matistyajyatam and papaogav paridhuyatam. May I be cleansed of both kama and papa. So we will see the next couple meanings in next class. Hari Om. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.